Hey guys, Gary with Door Closers USA. In today's video, we're going to go over how to measure and replace weather stripping for your commercial glass storefront door. So depending on your configuration will determine sort of which weather stripping you may have. Here we have a storefront double door, and on double doors, the most common weather stripping is the seal between the doors. It's very noticeable with drafts or with daylight if you run into a situation where your door is missing that. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So on this particular door, this is you'll see this sort of setup on a lot of storefront double doors where you have two pile weather strips here. And you'll even see these screws here. Now, a lot of people think that you have to replace this whole metal extrusion with the weathering. You really don't. All you really need to do is purchase the replacement weather stripping from us. And believe it or not, it actually slides in. So what these screws here do, a lot of them are spring loaded. So that's actually how you adjust your weather stripping in and out. If you unscrew these screws, it brings this metal plate out and creates more of a seal. If you screw it in, it sucks the weather stripping in, creating more of a gap. So these are strictly adjusters. But depending on your door model and make, you could have different weather stripping. Although all these doors look the same, they do vary on pivot hinges, weather stripping, and even door handles. So none of them are exactly alike. So the best thing to do is if you either know your door maker model, such as VistaWall, Conair, or whatnot, contact us. We can guide you to the right product, the right weather stripping product. But if not, you're going to have to most likely measure your weather stripping in order to determine which one you need. So a lot of people think this thing is, stuck in here. It currently is stuck in here, but during the installation process, it actually slides into this slot. And if you were to just slide it into this slot and leave it, it would eventually fall out and start dragging. So what the installer will typically do is either at the bottom or the top, he'll take a like flathead screwdriver and sort of indent the metal here. And that creates, that holds the weathering in, so it's essentially stuck. So if you look down here, you can tell the middle's pretty loose, but up top, you can see it's not as loose. That's because if you run your finger up over here, you'll feel that there's an indent, and that's what's keeping it in. So when you go to actually replace this, all you really need to do is run your finger up and down the channel, find where it's been dented in, and then take a flathead screwdriver and just undent it, bring it out, so that now it can slide easily. So you could see, and a lot of times you'll go into new door installations and they may only peen it down at the bottom or once at the top. And eventually what happens is the weather stripping will start hanging out over the door, and then people will start slamming it and it'll get damaged, and pretty soon it'll break off. So for this sake, I'll just kind of show you guys. This is the replacement weathering that's used on this door. And I'll kind of show you guys here. Okay, so this is the top view. And as you can see, there are two weather piles right here, and you can see that they slide in to this channel right through here. And see, you can see this one. This is actually where it's been peened over. So you can see where this has actually been peened over. See, it's been dented over, and that's why the weathering is stuck there. So if I were to remove that, all I need to do is take my flathead, widen that up a little, and then it'll slide right out. But essentially, with any sort of weather stripping, whether you have this design or another, what you're wanting to do is you could see that there's a plastic piece that slides into that groove. You want to measure the width of that. Now, this one in particular is 1/8 of an inch. That's the width. So that's the first thing you want to measure. And then you want to measure what we call the pile height, the height of the actual mohair. Of course, you also need to look at your gap of your doors because, for example, let's say there was a gap on this door. Okay, you would need to order the 1/8 inch backing width, we call it, pile weather stripping type. But depending on your gap, whatever your gap is, you want to at least have the mohair length to cover that. And again, this one in particular is 1/8 inch backing width with a 5/8 inch pile height. So I'll go ahead and show that to you guys. So here we go. Here you can see it. Of course, I did cut it with scissors, so it's kind of smashed in a little. But this actually, the backing width, this plastic width, measures 1/8 inch, and then the pile height is 5/8 inch. Now that is pretty for this door package. That's standard. I mean, 5/8 of an inch is a pretty big gap to cover. If your gap is that large, most likely your pivot hinges have gone out and your door's starting to sag, and that's causing different larger gaps. So if you have something where you need an even larger gap, we do have weathering, surface applied weather stripping that can be put on the face of the door. But like I said, anything larger, if this 5/8 inches is not good enough for you, you probably have an improper door installation or something like that, because that's a large gap. Keep in mind too, you still have the adjustments. After you install this and slide it in, you still can bring it out even further with these adjustment screws here. So, you should be able to easily seal the gap between your doors. And again, this is the double door weather stripping type. So just to recap, here's how you guys measure whether you have this type of weather stripping or maybe you have an older door that you don't even know what the model is. Pull some of that weather stripping out and then measure the backing width, which is the width of the plastic base. So this one is 1/8 inch, and sometimes they're shaped differently. They could be like a T shape, which I'll show you in a second. But measure the backing width, so the width of the plastic, and then the height, the height of the actual mohair. And then once you have those measurements, you're good to go. You can contact us and we'll be able to match something up. But like I said, if you know your door model and make, do you have a Vista wall? Do you have a tube light? We can get you the replacement weather stripping, just based off of the name. And again, the only time weathering really differs is this is a butt hinge hung door. Most doors are offset pivot hinge hung, just depending on what part of the states you're in. So these types of doors you'll see on the double doors, they typically have the 2 strips set up. Unless it's a Conair, they have the larger wide piece that goes in there. But if you have a center hung door, and what I mean by a center hung door, these doors you can see are offset hung, or they're butt hinge hung, and the door is pretty much flush with the frame. On a center hung door, the door is inset into the middle of the frame. And as a result, that will utilize typically a different sort of weather stripping. So that's another thing to consider. But another place where you'll see weather stripping, if you follow me, on single doors and frames, if you have a decent storefront door, there'll typically be a wider frame stop. You may have a thinner thin stop style, but usually there is weathering here. Now this weathering would be a little bit harder to remove because essentially you have to remove the frame stop. This pops out and then you could slide this weathering out, but it's again the same principles. If you were to slide this out, it would have a T-backer width that you'd measure, and then if you pull up on the mohair, you can kind of measure the height. And then once we have that information, we can match it up. Okay guys, so as I was explaining on the frame stop, how it kind of uses a different type of weather stripping, here's an example of a different model of weather stripping. If you look, the one we were using before, like I said, was about 1/8 inch for the backing width. Look at this style. You can see we call it a T style, but again, same principles, just measure the width of this. And then for the height, this one was 5/8 of an inch. Again, just measure the height off of here. So that's why it is important, if you don't know your door model or make, to pull a little bit out and verify what style you have. But either style, measure the base width and the pile height, and we can match it up for you guys. And that wraps up this video, guys. If you have any questions, call us, email us, let us know. I'll put the links to all these products down below. Thank you.